Muted. Welcome to the show. Our slide didn't work, but that's okay. We're live and in person. Hello, LinkedIn, Facebook crowd out there. If you have any questions, reach out. I am so excited on our show Together We Serve today. I have Summer Watson, who I've known for over probably a year now. We just bring referrals back and forth, but somebody that has a spirit of a servant's heart, that what I'm all about. And she's like a sister from another mother. Hey, Summer, welcome to the show. You're muted as well, Summer. Our tech is just crazy. You're okay. I'll keep talking because I can talk.
Here we are.
There we go.
Well,
Perfect.
I am so excited to be here with you today, Steve, and to just have this conversation, share this space with you, and be here to talk about things that are going to really help people put things into practice. So it's just not theoretical. We are going to talk about things that we can use and apply today.
Amen. Leadership. That's right. A big thing for Summer and what you do. Talk about leadership.
Well, I am a high performance coach, doctor of clinical psych, podcaster, I do all these different things, but what's most important to me is really being an agile leader. It always has been. That's number one. But also number two is building community, bringing community together, creating spaces like this one where we can have these conversations, where they're safe places to have conversations, to learn, to grow, to share wisdom and insight. So what does it mean to be an agile leader? It really means understanding your own emotions. So it starts with understanding right here first who you are, and then being able to really empathize with others because you've understood and grasped what it means to be and tap into your emotional agility. And that means really being able to identify how you're feeling and put a name to it.
You've been doing this for a while, right? How long have you been doing this?
The coaching bit?
Yes.
So I've been in that. Well, let me put it this way. I've been in the human services field for over 30 years now. 30 years. I have a master's in human services with a specialty in community counseling. I also have a doctorate in clinical psych. And then when you go and look at the coaching bit of this, the coaching bit has been in my life and present ever since I was 20, I think it was 20, 26, 27, when I began this journey in this human services space.
Yeah. And being a PhD helps, but, PhD is just, to me, is just, do a lot of work for that.
A lot of work.
Scholar and all that, but it's really the soul of the person that makes a difference in somebody's life. Talk about how your soul changes people's lives, because it does.
Oh my gosh. Well, your heart's got to be in it. And I think that part of that agile leadership is understanding who you are. And it might sound woo-woo. It might sound like, oh gosh, we've heard this before, but truly, do you know how many times going through my programs, whether it be a master's program or a doctoral program or working with people, that they would say, I just don't know how I feel, or I don't understand. I don't even know what to think. Or we've been told, just ignore it or push that away. You'll feel better. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. Or, we've been conditioned throughout the years to not think about those things or not tap into our emotions. But times are changing. Times are changing. And it's time for us to change, because the more we sweep it away, it doesn't do anything but stay there. Our emotions and what we're feeling and how we're feeling about a certain situation, a certain person, it stays there unless we do something about it, unless we recognize it. That's why when we talk about emotional agility as a successful leader, it really is important to be able to identify how you're feeling. So let me go back to something I just said a moment ago. I don't think I finished my statement, but when I was training and going through a program, my master's program, it was 13 months of an intensive program. I had 3 mentors during that time because I had to have three internships. And during that time, I was asked multiple times, identify your feeling. And they take out this chart with all these different faces, right? And it had a happy face, a joyful face, a sad face, an angry face, frustrated face, like all these different faces. And they'd say, how you're feeling today, right?
I love that.
and and I was like, okay, how am I feeling today? And so we go through that. The reason we go through that is because you're asking those same questions of other people. And as coaches, guess what?
Yeah.
We ask the same questions. How you doing today? And so, and I'll get to the second component in a minute, but the first step in being an emotionally agile leader is recognizing how you're feeling, putting a name to it, and understanding the why. Why are you feeling that way? Now, I'm going to take a bit of a turn here, and I'm going to put on this doctor hat here, right? And there was a theorist, a doctor, a psychiatrist. His name was Alfred Adler, and I consider myself an Adlerian. And I studied him. I studied Freud. Well, Alfred Adler deviated from Freud because he said, Sigmund, not everything is psychosocial or psychosexual. Not everything is subconscious. Lots of it is, but there are other things than that psychosexual type of stuff going on. There's more to us. There's multiple factors that influence who we are, how we behave, what we think, our mindset, all of that. And so I really liked Alfred Adler, and I began to study him because he was really the father of modern psychology, of humanistic
Mm.
psychology. And I really find that I am a humanist when I'm looking at people, whether or not that is through coaching, whether or not that was through counseling, or that was through assessment, clinical assessment. I was looking at multiple factors as to why somebody was thinking, behaving the way they were. And so the first thing that we always want to know is how you're feeling, but a lot of people don't know how to answer that question.
Yeah.
So why I say the first step to being a emotionally agile and successful leader is to understand your own emotions, because you're going to be asking the same of others. And to be the second part of that is to have empathy for others. And so if you don't understand yourself and your own emotions, how do you expect yourself to even have empathy for somebody else?
Yeah. And that's so important because you need somebody to help you with that. This is not a solo journey, right?
No, gosh, no. Like I said, as I went through my mentorship, it was like a whole counseling program for me because I had
Yeah.
three mentors, right? And I had one mentor who would oversee and supervise when I counseled. So if I were going into individual or group or couples counseling, I would have to go through certain things with her, and she would always want me to do a personal emotional check-in. And she said, check in with yourself, Summer, because you don't want to go into that session,
Hmm.
that coaching session, feeling a certain way. And guess what? That's going to seep into that, potentially seep into that session. So do a check in, do an emotional check in with yourself and understand why. And we can all do that. Even when, as leaders, we become or are involved in a high stress situation. Let me tell you, I've been in some seriously high stress situations. I worked in a lock facility for 3 years, a mental health lock facility for 3 years. For over 3 years, at different times, I worked in different hospitals as a director, as doing the direct service, as multiple things as a clinician. And there were times where somebody who was brought in, who was having an episode, a clinical episode where they might have been experiencing psychosis, thought that maybe I was there to harm or hurt them. And so they would, kind of charge at me. And I'm like, no, no, oh my gosh. And you begin to think very quickly on your feet. And you begin
Yeah.
to think, okay, how do I de escalate the situation and be able to take that breath to make some really critical decisions quickly? And so when I ask humans to identify their emotions, we can do that quickly. It doesn't take all day. And we can take a breath. We can take that breather so we can take that space to really understand how we're feeling. So I ask you, even when you're in the most demanding or difficult situation, take the breath, get the space that you need, and you can do it. It doesn't have to be 30 seconds. It doesn't have to be an hour. You can do it pretty quickly.
Yeah. And we all have difficult situations, some
Yeah,
smaller and some bigger. You know,
right.
it's, we were just talking about a toilet clean. I'm going to be very honest on the show. It's a small little thing, but it's got to be taken care of and things. So we go through life understanding all this, and you guide me in that journey.
Yeah.
Here comes an obstacle. You
Yes.
work with them and talk about it, right?
Yes. And again, I go back to, and I've done this with people at the C-suite level. I've done this
Mhm.
with people on an individual level who are emerging entrepreneurs, those who are just starting out, those who want to start a business, because here's the influences. We have we have our families, we have our friends. So those are the social influences, right? We have our work, we have our health, we have our mind, there are multiple influences that will guide our behavior, our thoughts. And so, but here's the thing, we have the ability to change that. And we also have the ability to ask for help, to ask for support.
Mm.
And absolutely, no matter if it's coaching, counseling, mentorship, ask for that support. Ask for it. There's nothing wrong in asking for it. As a matter of fact, it makes you a more successful leader because you're gaining the objectivity that maybe you didn't have before. Now, here's the second part of being an emotionally agile leader and being successful at it is that we all come into the world, into a situation, into a new job, into entrepreneurship with a story, right? We all have
Yeah.
a story. We all have a past. And so many times we haven't resolved some of that story. And it's really important to be able to resolve your own story or look at your own story and do have those points of reflection. And there's a lot of people will say, well, don't look back. And I say, take a glance back, right?
Yeah.
Take a glance back and gain the wisdom from the the experiences that you've had in the past. And so those experiences are the best teachers, the best wisdom that you can apply to your next steps.
Yeah.
And if you're still confused about those next steps, ask for help. But let me go back to story. So we all have a story. And the story, and I mention story because when we think about our own story or we think about going into a doctor's office, many times you'll fill out a form and there'll be a bunch of check boxes, right? And that's great for the quantitative research. They want that data. They want to collect that data. And then you get somebody like me who's a phenomenologist. Now that's a big word. That is a big word. And that means a researcher from who gathers data, the story from that person's subjective lens, and I try and look at it from an objective perspective. And so that's not always easy. And that's why I say, look at
Yeah.
your own story. Look what triggers you. Look at the things that maybe you're not in alignment with because you're going to be working as a coach, as a leader, as a business owner. You're going to be working with a lot of different people.
Yeah.
So how do you not get triggered? Working, doing that self work, doing those check ins, right? Because we want to, whether it's an employee, whether it is a client, whether it's somebody that you're just getting to know and having an introduction with, they have a story. They're going to bring a story into that conversation. They inevitably always do, whether it's short, whether it's long, whether they're tangential, whether they're circumstantial, whatever it is in that story and how they deliver that story, how are you going to see it from an objective lens? How are you going to take that in and just digest what they're telling you?
Yeah.
And that's important as a leader. How are
Yeah.
you going to do that without imposing your own value system, your own beliefs, your own thoughts, or get triggered by that? So,
Yeah. And I love what you said about past because we shouldn't look at, don't dwell in the past, but learn from the past. That's what
absolutely.
you were saying. Oh,
Oh,
that's so good.
absolutely. Yeah.
So, what does a person look like? And you work with females and males, right?
I work with females and males. Yes, I do.
Yeah.
And so there's all kinds of folks that come to me. And I also want to go through like another step. I think that I don't want to omit this step
Okay.
So let me cover this really quickly. So not only do we do our own emotional check-ins, not only do we understand our own story to be able to listen to somebody else's story objectively, but I think it's okay to, when you feel you are getting triggered, to take a break, to take a break, to take a breather, to reset and take some space. And that's always really important. And don't shy away from that. Be okay with that. Be okay with taking the space, because again, you're working with humans and they might just say something where you're like, ah. I mean, there are many times where I was working in mental health and we just meet with a client and we'd go behind the, in our office, and we'd have to like take that mental break. We'd
Yeah.
have to take the breather. We'd have to take the mental break, because anybody who came to see me was in crisis. It wasn't ever a non-crisis moment. It was always crisis.
Yeah.
So how does your brain, how does your body, how do you not take on the trauma? And it is so important. And then the other thing I will say, and this is kind of fun, and I really enjoyed this, is as you're doing a check-in with yourself and you're hearing about somebody, and maybe that somebody, as an entrepreneur, you're listening to them, and maybe that somebody has like excelled really quickly and they've thrived, and you're just like, oh my gosh, why can't I be there? Why am I not there? I'm trying so hard. I'm working so hard. Like, why am I not there? Or we're in the same space. Like, are they competition? Like, have that check in with yourself, because it is your mindset. It is
Yeah.
a mindset. And it's also, guess what? It's your ego. And your ego's coming into play, and your ego's saying, hey, this person, I feel threatened by this person, right? And so what we end up doing is we tend to put up our blinders, put up our walls, and boom, guess what? We don't hear that objective story anymore, or from an objective lens. We start feeling oogie and weird. And it's like, woo, do that check in with yourself. Figure out why you're being triggered by that, because we all come into entrepreneurship, into business, into our jobs with a different skill set. And so check your ego at the door.
Amen.
I have a really great story, and let me know if you remember this, Steve. So, do you remember the song "We Are the World"?
Yes.
We are the world.
We are. Yeah, we could.
We
I won't
are
sing it, but I'll let you. Yeah, we are. Yeah, Michael Jackson, right? Michael Jackson.
It was a whole slew
The
of
whole group of
incredible people, right? So it was Michael Jackson, it was Prince, it was Cyndi Lauper, it was just, there were so many. There was Hall and Oates, I think. There were just so many people. And as a matter of fact, the person who actually produced this was Quincy Jones. And Quincy Jones knew, and guess what? The night that they did this, the night that he actually produced it, it was the night of the Oscars. Was it the
mm,
Oscars, or was it the night of the which is
Emmy,
the
the
Emmys?
music, Emmys.
Yeah, the music Emmys, or the Oscars. So it was one of those big nights, and everybody was converging into LA at the time, right? And they knew that they would have to do the production of this song that night, but they'd have to keep it under wraps. Imagine all of these people. I mean, there were multiple people, like 30, 40, 50 people coming into this space, and they're all going to leave, this big ceremony and come to this space that they were trying to keep under wraps. Well, anyway, Quincy Jones is going to produce this song with all these like people who have been in the industry, the music industry, for decades. I mean, decades. We're thinking Diana Ross here too, right? We're talking Diana Ross. So he puts a sign up on the wall where everybody can see it, and it says, check your ego at the door. And I
Wow.
was like, good for him. Because here's the thing, they all had a purpose. They all were coming together to create an impact. And that was to raise money for people who were hungry, who needed food. And so he really wanted to make a difference and an impact in the world. And part of that is checking your ego at the door.
Yeah.
As a good leader, we need to learn how to do that.
Yeah, and especially will not be that level, that big of a project. It could be a small project, you and somebody else can check
Oh
you
yeah.
at the door. Doesn't matter.
Yeah. You should watch this documentary because there were people in there, there were musicians who were phenomenal. But you could tell when you get personalities, different personalities together, somebody wants to take over, somebody's got an idea, creative license, or they want to take over and have their creative license listened to. And here's the thing, we all want to be heard.
Yes.
We all do. We all want to be heard. We want to be valued and we want to have a purpose. Alfred Adler said, when we feel like we have a loss of purpose or feel like we don't have purpose, that's our point of discouragement. That's where we can start depressing or
Yeah.
feeling disconnected. And one of the things, and we'll go to this later, but one of the things that was really critical about and important about the project that Quincy Jones was creating was bringing community together. And this is something that you and I both love to do. Why don't you tell people how you love to bring community together? Because this is one of those platforms, Steve.
Well, it's Together We Serve, and people go, that's an interesting title, but you just described the title right there of this show. Community, groups, whatever it may be, is we grow together. We never can grow isolated. COVID taught us that, right?
Yes.
How many
Yes.
people? My wife works at Trader Joe's, and there's still people, I don't know lately, but last January, women coming in and haven't left their house in 2 years, 3 years to go
Yeah.
shopping.
Wow.
And you could tell, she could tell there's just, the gloves on, they're still fearful. We can't live in fear. We cannot be a leader if we have fear. Now, you can have fear, but you've got to manage it.
Yeah.
And you can't project it on your people that you're mentoring or working with. Can you imagine? Oh my God, Summer, I'm going to work with you, but I'm just freaking out. I got to climb this mountain. But I don't, you're going to go, well, how are you going to mentor me? You're making me scared.
Right.
So,
but let me interject here, Steve, because I think that it's natural to have fear.
yeah.
It is absolutely natural to have fear. But what I would say is understand it, identify it, and know when you're going through it. Because I think what happens is the more we push it away and say, okay, we're not going to have this fear, we're not going to have this fear, we haven't dealt with it. And so we have to understand why we're fearful. What do they say? Like speaking in front of people is one of the biggest fears for a lot of people, and speaking in front of a crowd. And it's still, I still get nervous, right? Speaking in front of a large crowd. And I did a presentation the other day and in front of a bunch of doctors at a university. And I'm like, okay, breathe, right? So we all have our little, but we can do our check-ins. It doesn't mean it has to immobilize us, but it does mean that we check in with ourselves and find a way to practice bringing down that angst, because it may not be my way that you find relief. It could be your own way. So I say that because one of the people that I work very closely with, and I'm going to do a shout out to my partner for the Emotional Entrepreneur Show. Her name is Jen Fontanilla. She loves to speak in front of people, and she loves to meditate. She loves to journal. And I will tell you what, I am not a journal person. Like, oddly enough, many times I would ask people to journal. But I really found that journaling doesn't have to be, and I think this is where it became something different for me. If I wanted to journal, I could take a notebook and I could actually start drawing pictures, or I could start scribbling words, or I can do free association. So the way that I might journal could be very different than the way my partner, Jen, journals, and she bullets everything out, and it looks amazing. And I'm like, wow, you are really organized.
Yeah. Yeah, and you bring up a great point. It's customized to you.
Yes.
Leadership's the same way. You don't need to be a leader like General Patton. Maybe I'm aging myself, or be a coach like Vince Lombardi's different than Bill Walsh. Because you said something about being fearful and a little nervous. Well, Patrick Mahomes, I watched a documentary about him called Quarterback on Netflix. Yeah. And before the Super Bowl, he was nervous. He had fear. hello, he's one of the best quarterbacks in the world. Beat my favorite team. I think he's your favorite team too, the 49ers, but we won't go
49ers.
there. Yeah.
Woo!
But if a guy at that level is going to be, for Tom Brady talks about his
Yes.
preparation helps with his fear, but he still has fear.
Yes.
Then we're all going to have it. We can all conquer it. And then we have to.
Yeah.
I want to ask you, you've
Yes.
mentioned triggers and check-ins. Give
Yes.
us some examples of check-ins that you
Okay.
think are good.
So okay. So it's simply this. Before you go into a meeting
Mhm.
with maybe your employees, do a personal check-in, see how you're feeling. If you've been racing around for a good part of the day and you've been taking phone calls and you've been having meetings and you've been like, oh my gosh, a high stress day, breathe, breathe. Okay. I want you to do, there's a 4 count breath, like, and it's called box, the box breathing. And so you can just take a deep breath in for 4 counts. And I know, you know, you'll feel a difference. So if you just do it with me and take that breath in for 4 counts, like 1, 2, 3, 4, and just hold it for a few seconds and then breathe out for a count of four. 1, 2, 3, 4. Relax your voice, your shoulders drop, your
Amazing.
eyes start like feeling, a little bit droopy. I mean, I'm just doing it right now. I'm like, okay, I can take a nap. So
Yeah.
it's simple things like that where you can take a breather, find out breathing techniques, do diaphragmatic breathing from the belly, deep in the belly, and bring that breath up. And let me tell you, there have been some serious moments in my life this last quarter where I had to learn how to rebreathe, and literally and figuratively. And so when you take that breath, it makes such a difference. So if you're going into a meeting or if you're going into a phone call where you know you're going to have to be focused, take a breath, take a walk. It can be a lap around the inside of your house. If you're working from your home, take a couple of laps, and I'll have a story about that in a sec. But take a few laps inside your house. If you want to get outside, breathe some fresh air, do that too. And it may sound simple, but sometimes those simple things can really trigger the brain to relax, refocus, and regain composure and just really bring down and reevaluate, or not reevaluate, but reset your mindset, right? And sometimes that's all we need. So whether it's a meeting, whether it is a phone call, whether it's meeting somebody new, you want to come in there fresh. You want to come in there excited. You want to come in there with your own internal joy, like, and connect with others. So there are just simple techniques to be able to do that and refocus. So
I love that because it's got to be simple or people aren't going to do it. Just that's flat out. Human beings, simpler it is, the more it's going to be adapted and be done.
yeah, absolutely. I have a friend, she did 1 minute meditations, and I was like, oh my God, that is so cool. I totally love that because I can integrate probably 3 or 4 of those 1 minute meditations in my day. It can be the same one, and I was good to go. And I was like, you need to do more of those because I like those. And it's a good way to check in and just really get refocused. And so there are all kinds of ways. And I will tell you, full disclosure here. So in November, I was diagnosed with a form of cancer and I had a tumor in my lung. And so they took it out in November. I guess it was September that they diagnosed it. And so they took it out in November and it was in my lung. They cut out part of my lung. So when I say I literally had to catch a breath, how to learn how to re-breathe and expand that lung, I was taking laps in the inside of my house at times because if I was
Wow.
too compressed, I couldn't catch a breath. So I had to get up. I had to breathe as deeply as I could because even going up a flight of steps was like climbing Mount Fuji.
Jeez.
So I mean it. When you need to take a breath, take a breath. Take that space, take that moment. Sometimes it's only a moment to take a deep breath to really relax the muscles in your face, your shoulders, and get refocused and recentered.
I love it. Well, let's take a break. That's a
Sure.
perfect segue. Everybody take a breath for a few minutes. We're going to take a break, get some water, and we'll come back with more of this incredible Dr. Summer Watson.
Welcome to our show. Together we serve. Welcome to our show. Sit back and enjoy. We will talk with people about their stories. With our host, Steve Ramona. We're ready to start. Together we serve. Together we serve. Together we serve. Together we serve. Welcome to our show. Together we serve. Welcome to our show. Sit back and enjoy. Education, inspiration, motivation for business and life. With our host, Steve Ramona. We're ready to start.
Well, that's our new song for our show. Hope you were
Cool.
bouncing around. I saw Summer doing a little bounce. I love it. I want to get into something that I love that you do. We first met, you were going to do, and you may have done that workshop in Santa Cruz with the women and
Yeah.
in person. And talk
Okay.
about that. I love what you do with that.
Thank you. So I actually ended up not doing that because that was at the time that I was diagnosed.
Okay.
So yes, so it ended up not, and we were getting ready to, you know, we had put everything together. There was all this great planning and had a great space in Santa Cruz, California. And then that happened. And so what we do is we readjust, right?
Yeah.
And take care of our health and take care of our well-being. But the last event that I did was just in a year ago in February, actually the end of February. And that was in San Diego. And so I live, for those of you that don't know, I live currently outside of Washington, D.C., but California girl, raised in California, California at heart. But I co-created a event with many other people called GritCon. And GritCon was a name that came up with that stands for growth, resiliency, intention, transformation, and connection. That last part is so important and for me, and all of it's important. But I wanted to create a name that aligned with my own values, that aligned with a lot of people's values: growth, resiliency, intention, transformation, connection. These are all the things. And check this out, Steve. These are all the things and many things that people are like, gosh, this is what I need, for purpose and for intention. And I have something that I like to say. All have and want passion, purpose, and impact, right? And so I knew that going into the development of GritCon. And I also did some research because I am a researcher. And I thought to myself, I want to research where the needs are, where the pain points are for my clients, for the people that are looking to come together and want to know and want to really cultivate their grit, cultivate their resilience, cultivate their intention, transformation, and connection. So how can we do that together? So I researched and I did some surveys, and I really wanted to know what people needed. And again, we were just coming out of COVID. And I thought to myself, well, this is a great way to come back together. This is a great way as emerging entrepreneurs, mid-sized business owners, those that were military looking at transitioning, those that were military spouses like myself. Husband is now retired after 21 years of serving in the Marine Corps, but being a military spouse for 21 years, we did a lot of transitioning. And so all of those things, all those components of GritCon, growth, resiliency, intention, transformation, connection, I've experienced those. We've experienced those. And people who answered the survey experienced those things and wanted more. They wanted more connection. So people do strive. They want to connect with
Yeah.
others.
Yeah.
They do. So as human beings, if you go back way, 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 way back, we created groups. We created communities. Why? Because we needed we need to keep ourselves safe, right? We did it to survive. But now we do it to thrive. Now, because it's so deep into our who we are, into our fiber, even if we're shy, even if you're an introvert, let me tell you, there is still a need to feel connected with your community. So I created GritCon. Multiple people came out from across the country. It was incredible. And I had that opportunity to work with my partner, who I do the Emotional Entrepreneur Show with. I had the opportunity to work with Ray Leonard Jr., and he's the son of Ray Jr., the boxer. So it
Sugar Ray
was
Leonard.
Ray
Sugar Ray
Leonard.
Leonard. Yeah.
Ray Leonard, yes. Thank you so much. And we had a great event, and we had multiple speakers from all different backgrounds who were all entrepreneurs. And honestly, there were people who came from Florida, people who came from New York City, out to San Diego. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, people want to connect. And yes, as you mentioned earlier, people are still a little fearful. They were a little cautious, but they came. They did it. Why? Because there was a need. There was a need to be together. And this speaks to community. So this is something that you and I are both really passionate about, are creating these spaces to cultivate community. I am extremely passionate about it. So I do it both online, and I've had digital events, but I've also had in-person events for the last, oh well, for decades now. You know, it goes way back during my sorority years.
That's community as well. We won't get into that. That's an
Yeah.
interesting community that we won't talk about.
Yeah,
That
you know
we
what
can go
though?
on a tangent.
I have to say the reason I mention it because I served as the president of my sorority at Berkeley, UC Berkeley, and we had a lot of community gatherings, and it wasn't just for parties; it was for philanthropy, and I learned a lot about leadership as the president of my sorority, as a group of women coming together to make a difference in community. And a lot of times people think, oh, it's just a social thing. Well, yeah, we are social beings. Of course, we want to get together. And where we find that, I mean, I looked at ROTC, I looked at a lot of different groups to create community, because when I was going to undergrad at Berkeley, there were 25, 30,000 people that went to that school. And I was like, where do I find myself? I came from a city that had 25,000 people at the time, right? And so that was the university side. And I'm like, who am I? Like, where do I find my friends? Like, where do I find that connection? And so I went looking all over because I thought, I need a connection. I need to feel rooted here. And I want this to work for me. And so I want a community. And the sorority that I joined was very eclectic. There were women from all different backgrounds. It's actually a nationally Jewish sorority, and it was very interesting. And so I loved it because I did learn about philanthropy. I did learn about giving back to community, which has always been something that's really important to me. And so just creating community, creating spaces where we can get together, so important, so valuable. So when I started my company, I thought part of this company is going to be about giving back. It's going to be about creating a space where I give to folks. And that was when I developed the Core Women podcast. But then I also thought, well, I'm going to produce. So as a producer, you're a producer, you produce the show, you produce podcasts, you produce so much. And we produce programs as coaches, right? And so I wanted to produce in-person events. And so that's what I started doing, because I've had a history of bringing community together, because I started my professional career in the nonprofit sector. And guess what? My mentor said, you're going to go out in community and you're going to bring the community together to make change, because the only way you can really make change that will last is by bringing the community members to the table. Yeah. And it was interesting. It was difficult. It was challenging. I was young, and yet I was going to do it. I was like, Okay, let's do it. I mean, I was looking with all kinds of communities, from schools to neighborhoods that had high rates of gang violence. It was just, it was, and when I go into those communities, what did I do? The first thing I did was check myself and get ready to hear from an objective perspective what their stories were, because I didn't understand their stories unless I was willing to go in there with an open heart and an open mind.
Yeah. Yeah. And what I love about your events is when you bring community together at your event, guess what? Everybody gets to network together
Oh
with
yeah.
high energy, because you bring high energy with speakers and the things you do. And then the time when you're on a break or after the event, they get to mingle and get to know each other, right?
Oh my gosh, I'm so glad you brought that up, Steve, because here's the thing. People walked away going, I want more. I want more. I want more of that. Summer, I can't, in February, in the first or second week of February, I there were 7 people in that or second week that reached out saying, "When's your next event? When's your next event? Can I come and speak at your event? Can I? When is? I just want to know about your next event. When are you having it? Can we?" Another guy from this area, because I had an event last summer in DC. Because wherever I go, I try and bring people together, right? Whether it's New York, DC, California, wherever I go, and he said, "Well, can we have another one in DC?" And here I am trying to recover, right? And I'm like, I have to see, because I want to say yes. Like, it's my
Of
natural,
course.
it's just in me to say yes. Of course I want to bring people together. That excites me, right? And yet I had to take a step back, because I'm like, you're still recovering. You're doing all these things, and one of the things that I am working on is bringing and creating a woman circle. And that's always been part of my vision for the business. For Core Women is to bring a women's circle together. And so when I bring people together, they want more. But here's the thing. I also got phone calls after GritCon, people saying, "Oh my gosh, I got hired as a coach. Oh my goodness, I got hired as a coach to not just coach somebody independent, like individually, but by a county, or by, there was a lot of exchanging of not just cards, but there was a lot of hugs. There was a lot of, oh my gosh, we're going to, stay connected." And people did. And here's the thing, as I've created that community, many of these people who came to that event were part of my LinkedIn community, were part of my Instagram community, were part of the communities that I took time to really cultivate and interact with and create relationships with. So I know both you and I are not into that transactional
No.
gunk. Like, here's my business card and I'll get 3 people to connect with you. And like, that's not me. I'm all about building relationships, and I mean meaningful and intentional relationships where we're invested in each other just naturally. It happens organically, because when you are invested with somebody, to somebody, and you want to get to know them, it is going to go so much further than, "Hey, here's my business card, go out and get me three network people to network with." It's about really giving back and showing that you're doing something to create that relationship that's meaningful, that has intention, that you want to get to know them. You want to get to know what their vision is and how they are, going towards their goal, wanting to achieve A, B, and C, wanting to know what their mission is. And I say all these fancy words because they're part of a strategic, a part of a strategic plan. And people have, and they may not know that they're putting in a piece here, a piece there in regards to their strategic plan, but they are. And they're doing it because they want to feel connected and have a purpose. And so when people leave those events, they go away, one, wanting more, and two, feeling connected with the community, and three, feeling more purposeful, and four, guess what? They're probably going to get another gig, or they're probably going to have a speaking engagement from that, or they're probably going to be able to coach somebody from that because they've met a bunch of people.
Yeah. Yeah. Value. It brings value. Your network's your net
Huge.
worth. And I've added
Yes.
quality. The quality of your network too. Your
Yeah.
network.
Absolutely.
It's you have a bunch of takers in your network, you will not succeed. Just unfortunately, that's just the way it's going to be.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the website I have up there. I've left it up there, pensite.com/x
Yes.
core woman. What are your programs? And I love high performance.
Yeah. so so what I'm just establishing this new site and I absolutely love it. And I'm going to be creating more programs here, high performance coaching programs where people can go in and they don't necessarily have to meet with me, but they're going to get all kinds of videos and different things and program developments and modules to learn strategy, to learn how to be an emotional agile leader, how to be a more resilient leader. And if there's any like pain points that they need to be met, that's what I'm going to target in on. Because when I put these programs together, I don't just do them willy nilly. I actually do my research based on what are people looking for? What do they need? Where's the gap? Right. So it's really important because I think a lot of people, a lot of coaches in particular, they'll go out and go, I really love this. I think this is a great idea. And we love, as entrepreneurs, we love to create. We do. We may have left our corporate jobs. We may have did this transition and we're like, yay, we get to create. And so we get so excited and we start creating all these things, but we forget the research component of that. And the research is really important and it's really critical because you don't want to expel your energy or expend your energy in a place where people aren't going to actually look at your stuff. They're not going to buy your stuff. And that breaks my heart kind of too, because you put so much into it and it's not going anywhere. And it's not going anywhere because how are you actually connecting and filling a pain point or helping somebody achieve or overcome that pain point in their business or their daily lives, depending on what kind of coach you are. So the two things that I have up there right now, and this was because I wanted to offer something where people could come in and get something for free, is one of the guides is it's entitled Becoming an Agile Leader, a practical worksheet for business success. So there's a worksheet. I go over several different questions. There's reflection points in there. So pick that up. It is free. It is free at that pensite.com/x/core women. And then the other guide is Beyond Followers, the importance of creating a supportive online community as an entrepreneur. I loved creating that because I think a lot of people will go and think, oh my gosh, I can become an influencer. And, and it's not just about influencing. It's about connecting. It's again, I go back to, it's about creating a genuine, authentic community where you've built relationships together, where you've co-created, you've collaborated, you've just come together to do so many different things in the world together. And I think it's when you go in there with the idea of I've got an open mind and an open heart to meet people, to see where they're at, where they're functioning from, what they're bringing into the space, whether it be coaching, whether it be whatever it is in their professional arena. Be open to it because you never know who you're going to meet, what you're going to learn, more importantly, and where that relationship is going to go. And here's the thing. I don't care if you have 1 million followers. I don't. But if you have 500 followers that actually follow you, that comment on your posts, that reach out to you and say, hey, Summer, would you like to be part of this article? Hey, Summer, would you like to be part of this panel? Those 500 followers, like you mentioned, Steve, those are the quality. Those are the people that are in your sphere that want to see you be successful, that want to see you strive and thrive.
Yeah, I love that because I got 10 million followers, but they're broke. And I don't believe social media makes you money. It makes you exposure, like you just said. Speaking gigs. Hey, I want you to be on a panel. Those and an audience, what Summer just said is your thought leader platforms.
Yeah.
You want to make money online, you've got to be a thought leader.
Yeah.
You don't have to be Tony Robbins or Mark Cuban. You could be Summer Watson,
Yes.
or even a little bigger than Summer Watson or me or whoever. And I've
Right.
learned this, and you're going to be extremely successful. Again, success is all about your bucket, not me and yours, mine and yours, Summer. What
Yeah.
your bucket is. It could be $1 million, 10,000. We don't care. We just want to define your success.
Yes.
Right?
We want to help you define that. We want to help you with that clarity, right? So you're pointing yourself in the direction that's going to get you to your goals. Now, one of the things that I really want to mention here too is, you know, how as I was talking about, as entrepreneurs, we love to be creative and we love to create all these different things that may speak to people and then again may not, right? And I think that a lot of times we are caught in this space of, are we going to be reactive or we're going to be responsive? And when we are reactive, we just jump. We jump at everything, jump at everything, jump at everything. And when we're responsive, it gives us that space, again, going back to that space, that time to breathe, where we actually are here. Our reactive brain is here. But when our thinking brain is the frontal lobe. So what happens is when you give yourself that space, that moment to breathe, you're going to give yourself the opportunity to also look at, what is it that I want to achieve? What are my objectives set up so I can meet that goal? Whereas if you're reactive, you may not get the end result that you want because you're just jumping. You're just jumping again into it. And yes, occasionally as human beings, we will do that because we are not perfect, right? None of us are. And that's okay, because that imperfection is beautiful. But at the same time, we do want to think and give ourselves that space to say, take a breath. What's the end result that we're looking for here?
So we're right at the end of the time. Time flew by. I can't
Oh my
believe.
gosh.
Yeah, I know. But real quick, the podcast. Give us, quick 30 seconds on the podcast.
Okay, so it's called the Core Women Podcast. It's featured on most podcast platforms. So check it out. It's called the Core Women Podcast. And you can also go out and check it out on YouTube as well. So
Core Women. And then how can people get a hold of you? Because I know they want to.
Oh, yes. corewomen.com. You can go to my Instagram page at Core Women. That's with the K, folks. KORE women.com. And also Instagram or on LinkedIn at Summer Watson, MHS PhD.
Audience, do me a favor, reach out to her if you have questions or just to have a thought. She's open to that, like I am. We take meetings all the time with people just to get to know, because I always say opportunity door opens. You can always walk back out. Doesn't fit, doesn't work, whatever. But people go, I was just talking about this morning, hey, do you research people that you meet? Yeah, I might pop on their LinkedIn, but I want to get to know them like I just got to know you more, Summer, learn more things about you. That's the power of your networking events, your workshops, and empowering women and men to be
Yes.
better.
Yeah.
Amen.
Thank you, Steve.
God bless you. Thank you, audience, for watching. We'll see you next week, 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern, and have an excellent weekend.
Thank you.